Peaceful Warriors Wellness. Feel better, move better, be better. When you feel better, you feel more like you. And when you move better, there's so much you can do. Be who you were meant to be. Peaceful Warriors Wellness. Feel better, move better, be better. Peaceful Warriors.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feel Better, Move Better, Be Better podcast. I am your host today, Roma Osterman, and I am joined today by Lena Roberts.
And Sam Belyea.
I was waiting for you to go, hello, and then I was going to introduce Sam. I was working on it.
I'm sorry, I was so confused there.
It's okay. So I hear we're talking about plantar fasciitis today.
Yes, we are. Sam is going to talk to us a little bit more about it. But Sam, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you?
Sure. So in the context of plantar fasciitis, I am a massage therapist and reflexologist here in South Tampa, Florida. Been that way for about 12 plus years now, and started studying this fascinating modality, and it's taken me all over the world, helped me write a book, and now I get to appear on fun podcasts like this and talk about weird stuff like plantar fasciitis.
Plantar fasciitis is not weird. It is fascinating and painful.
Well, and here's the thing about the reason why I say weird is because plantar fasciitis is still such a mysterious condition. It's very difficult to treat, and clients will often come to me as a practitioner and to other massage therapists as a last resort after they've gotten shots, spent hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars on customized shoes or inserts, and it just becomes this very weird healing process. Unlike other things which are somewhat quick fixes, plantar fasciitis tends to come and go and become very severe very quickly and really affect other people's lives in a dramatic way.
And what works for one person does not work for the next person.
Completely.
Yes, it has. So what causes plantar fasciitis, or what are some of the causes?
Yeah, so there are many different causes. If we were to look at the textbook definition, we have plantar, meaning the bottom side of the foot, and itis, meaning inflammation. So technically, it's anything that can cause inflammation on the bottom of the foot. That might be a fun night out dancing in heels. That might be a weekend warrior event where maybe you just push yourself a little bit too hard and you incur some form of micro damage on the plantar surface of the foot, which is often categorized by a sharp stabbing pain. A lot of people refer to it as an ice pick sensation, like something's being kind of jabbed into the foot, especially first thing in the morning, while the body is what we would term like cold, and taking those first steps being incredibly painful because of that itis, because of that inflammation.
It has become a first question of mine whenever I get anyone comes in here that says, I think I have plantar fasciitis. I'm like, tell me about when you first get out of bed in the morning. And 98% of them says, I can't. I can't. I have to stretch before I get out of bed. I have to do whatever. I have to run to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. That first morning is always rough.
Yeah.
What causes it? Is it, well, not what causes it, but can prolonged stress? Like, I feel like that for me personally, I am real bad when I'm sitting here and I have to talk myself out of it every single time. I want to kick my heels back on my stool that revolves around. And I feel like that somehow or another that exacerbates the plantar fasciitis.
Yeah, I mean, posture can definitely do it throughout the day. A lot of people are stuck in that 90-degree bend, right? They go from the car to the desk, back to the car, to the couch, and their body is literally in that that square shape in the lower body more so than they are flat. And so the body never really gets a chance to unwind or decompress unless they're engaged in some sort of stretching or movement modality. Likewise, if people are undergoing short-term periods of intense physical activity, like I have clients all the time that will develop plantar fasciitis when they're moving, like they're physically lifting a lot of things in order to move house. They're trying to get fit for a wedding. They're trying to lose weight. They're training for an athletic event. When they start to engage their muscle tissues in a way that is really intense over a short period of time, the muscles will contract, and that will pull on the various extremities and create this irritation at pressure points like the heel.
What are some of the things that can mimic plantar fasciitis?
Well, you had mentioned stress, and I think that this is something that I've learned over the years with not just reflexology, but the idea of foot reading coming into the surface, the ability to use the extremities and specifically the feet as a mirror for the life, for the person. You know, stress always has a physical effect. And so if we learn to interpret that physical effect, we can have a deeper understanding of not just physically what's causing pain, but also internally what stress patterns cause pain. And plantar fasciitis has a very unique stress signature. It's all about somebody's sense of security and how they're moving forward. When their foundation has been rocked, when they feel like the rug has been pulled out from underneath them, when they no longer have that root chakra, that ability to ground, to center, to feel safe, stable, and sturdy. Plantar fasciitis is one of the ways that the body says, like, hey, I'm just not okay right now.
I'm writing down that safe, stable, and sturdy.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So tell us about some of the treatments with plantar fasciitis. I think most of us already know the traditional treatments. What are some of the more holistic and alternative treatments?
Sure. So what more recent studies have shown us is that circulation is key. So we really need to, and this is why, although I don't agree with this method as a practitioner, I can't say that it's not completely effective. The idea of taking something that has a little bit of heaviness to it and rolling it on the bottom of that foot, or getting something like that has a kind of an edge to it and just getting into that tissue and getting some deeper circulation into the heel is appropriate. There are much more intelligent ways to do that. None of this should trigger like that cringy pain feeling, but sometimes you just kind of need to get into the body. And that's also where some practitioners can be. Lena, we've talked multiple times before about cupping being a great modality, especially on the feet for that circulatory principle. But also any kind of movement. And it seems really contradictory that you move and you incur this pain in the foot, but the remedy is movement. The remedy is more circulation, not less. Because a lot of people who develop plantar fasciitis, I'd say a majority of my clients, they're not in a consistent movement pattern. They're doing things in short bursts, really getting the body tight, and then they're not winding down from that. And the body doesn't know how to counterbalance, so it just tightens. And if we get something like a regular walking, like 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, 15 minutes in the evening, just getting the body to warm, to circulate, to move, getting that ankle to unlock, getting some range of motion in the body, that's really what's going to be the key at breaking that up. Of course, we could always throw in like warm foot baths. Epsom salts are absolutely fantastic for the feet. Any form of body work or massage is going to be great. Even using hot towels or hot compresses on the feet. But we really want to use circulation as the primary remedy for plantar fasciitis.
Now, what about ice?
No. And this is something, and you're gonna love this. So more recently in movement therapy, they have renamed the method of treating injury. And we are probably familiar with the idea of MICE, movement, ice, compression, elevation. That was when I was going into physical therapy, that was what we were taught for 4 years, was the MICE method.
Yes.
Or
I was taught the rice method.
rice method. That was it. So first it was rice. It was rest ice compression elevation. Then they switched it to mice, movement ice compression elevation, because again, movement and circulation are what keeps the body healthy. But then they recently changed the acronym again, and whoever changed the acronym, their marketing department needs to fire them immediately, because it is now METH, movement elevation, movement elevation, traction, and heat.
I was expecting lice, but not meth.
Right. I'm like, y'all really need to reevaluate your, like, why not them, right? THEM instead of METH. But anyway, it's the idea that ice is no longer appropriate. Heat is now the primary circulatory method that should be used on all forms of injury. And we're seeing this now, especially more in hospital settings, where post cardiac surgery, you're up, you're moving. There is no stagnation. Stagnation
Correct.
breeds disease. Same thing with pregnancies and deliveries. Like, we need to get the body moving again. There is no downtime, because we know that when things stagnate, lymph coagulates and we no longer have that healthy immune response.
When I was working in critical care and people would have cardiac surgery, you had them up post-op day 2. When Scott had his cardiac surgery 2 years ago, they had him up at about 17 hours. He was up walking around that ICU unit. He had like all kinds of tubes and lines and everything on him. And there was 3 people. There were 3 staff members that was walking with him, supporting him and all of his equipment. So it really did change everything that was in me. I was like, no, you can't move him yet. He still has the chest tubes in. And they were like, no, he's going.
Yeah. And even like a couple years ago, I visited a friend in the hospital who was actually in for fainting spells, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong. And obviously, somebody who's fainting, they can't have them up and moving, but they had on their lower legs, on their calf muscles, compression.
Yes.
That was squeezing and pumping and releasing. And it was that idea of kind of replicating faux movement.
Yes.
But it's the same principle.
They had the compression hose on Scott also. And I have actually went to a reflexology treatment, and the reflexologist put the compression hose on me during the treatment. It was kind of odd. I felt really good afterwards. So, I'm sure that it has really good purposes there, but compression hose is something that has really came about in the past 10 years of more other than in critical care units.
Yeah. And with this particular example, it wasn't just a hose. It was actually like a blood pressure cuff, but it would automatically contract and release. It was a machine.
Yes.
And I think that when we're talking about something like plantar fasciitis, it's this idea of we just need that pump. We just need to keep moving, keep going, keep warming, keep circulating. And especially in a day and age where so many people are stagnant, and with COVID and isolations being enforced still, and a lot of people working from home, they no longer feel safe to go to the gym. It's this time where we need to be doing some sort of cardiovascular activity now more than ever, but especially the idea of getting blood pumping through the feet, getting the ankle moving, getting the range of motion back to where it was, and making sure that nothing is locking down in our tissues.
So whenever we go to treat it, we use reflexology techniques, but what can people do for their self?
I like to say ankle ABCs. So if you are familiar with the alphabet, the idea that you would, in a reclining position or something where the foot is able to lift, trace the ABCs with your foot in the air, starting with A, going to B, then C. And if you do that just really quickly, you'll see the foot going in multiple different directions, in multiple different shapes. And I'm lucky, honestly, if clients make it to L, but by the time that they make it to Z, if they make it that far, there's going to be a large amount of range of motion restored. And I always tell clients, we're looking for that click. We're looking for that pop, because with plantar fasciitis, especially false plantar fasciitis, where the body is just restricted and tight and mimicking true injury, the body just needs that bone realignment. And the best way to do that is with non-pressurized range of motion.
Non-pressurized range of motion. I like that. When is it about time for us to take a break, Roma?
It is. We'll just take a few minute break, just cut to Eric for a little commercial, and then come right back.
Yeah, when we come back, Sam's going to talk to us about some herbal therapies also. I'm excited about that because this will be something I get to learn with.
Yay. All right, see you guys in a minute. And we're back. Welcome to the Feel Better, Move Better, Be Better podcast. It is me, your host Roma, today with Lena and Sam. And we are talking about the herbal remedies for...
Yes. Are we going to talk about just for plantar fasciitis or herbal uses in general?
Uses in general would be great.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I'm going to give the stage to you, Sam, and because I am excited to learn a little bit today.
Sure. So herbal remedies are a very quickly growing holistic form of management for symptoms, but they do come with a lot of information gaps, both for the everyday user and for the serious practitioner. There's so much information that is misleading, so much information that's out there, period, things that need to be studied and researched. And in a society where we are so used to being given a pill, a single remedy, a single quick treatment to treat a condition, herbalism at its core is not that. It is a complex system of holistic interconnection that needs to be respected and used appropriately. And right now it's kind of not. So it's a lovely discussion about how holistic medicine works, a great example of how powerful nature can be, but also, there is a lot of red flags and cautionary tales about specific herbs and things that need to be researched before consumed.
Oh, yeah. I remember I wanted to get into herbalism several years ago, and I was looking into aloe. I literally wanted to make a book, like if the world fell to an apocalypse, I have a book that has all the herbs in it that I learned myself. And I picked aloe. It was very first one. I was like, okay, it's good for burns, like it's good for your skin. But I didn't realize if you eat it, it's like you're just going to clear out your entire system, and it's not going to be a good time. I was like, wow. Excellent example of how herbs work. So aloe, especially for us in Florida, being in the South, like aloe is bush medicine. Like we have it growing everywhere. It's so important for us because of the skincare properties of sunburns. Like every Floridian should be growing aloe. It's great to heal and soothe the digestive tract. Excellent for ulcers, excellent to mix into smoothies, especially if you have a hot or inflamed constitution. It's great to put on sore muscles or anything that is spasming because it is cooling, it is moistening, it is nourishing. However, the parts of the plant matter. The parts of the plant matter, and that's with every single plant, not just aloe, because they can have very different conditions. Like aloe's pulp, its gooey, liquidy center, which you can scrape out, has what we would call a demulcent effect. It's cooling, it's moistening, it coats things really well, it's sticky, it's gelatinous, it's wonderful for specific types of issues. However, the external coating is the exact opposite. It's drying, it's astringent, it's aggressive, it's aggravating. If you even look at the outside of aloe skin, it has spikes on it, which should tell you, this is part of the cactus family. It is not going to treat you nicely. And this is the way that we look at herbs, is a multifaceted approach.
plants are not just one thing. And in a society where we're looking at like aspirin, one thing, herbs are so much more complex than that. We say in herbalism that each herb contains within itself every single action, every single remedy, but you need to know what part of the plant to harvest, how to make the medicine, and that takes time.
Absolutely. I just keep hearing also the kava plant in my head. Like, well, the root is great. Drink it all the time. Fantastic. Top of the root? No. Don't mess with it. Period.
There was actually a really interesting concept of story about ginseng, which is currently overharvested and no longer sustainable to use at this point because its medicinal effects have been so well researched. But in the old days, they would give the big root of ginseng to the nobles, and then they would cut off the little root hairs or the little side roots that would develop from the ginseng and give those to the poor people or the everyday people's medicine. And they thought that by giving the core of the root to the nobles that they were getting better medicine. Well, research has shown that the little tendrils of the root have more of ginseng's phytoactive properties than the core mother root itself. And so I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And that's the kind of stuff that we're learning, is that the part of the plant matters, and every single aspect, just like you as a person, you have different organs that serve different functions. Why wouldn't plants? And the idea that if you go in and you read online that yellow dock is good for infection and inflammation because of its berberine content, and you want that plant, what you need to understand is that these companies that are mass producing these herbs, they're taking the whole plant, not the root. So you may be getting a bunch of leaves and bark, not the root with the active chemical that's being researched currently. And that's a big thing. If you read some of these herbal research papers, they have 10, 20, 100 times the dosage of what's in those over-the-counter bottles that's being studied to be marginally affected. So you're getting extremely underdosed in some cases, but you wouldn't know that unless you took the time to read the research. Herbalism is just not that simple.
I think that's what confuses me, is I don't know what to take from each. And and you think that, just ginseng, you used an example, that if you buy it from a reputable company, then you are going to be getting a reputable product. And that is not true anymore.
No.
You're not sure what you're getting.
Right. And this is why working with small farms, reading the reviews, understanding who's growing your medicine, what conditions it's under. I just watched a TikTok the other day about oranges and how oranges are actually not orange in other parts of the world. Their rind stays green, but in Florida, because of our cold snaps in the winter when oranges are ripening, it turns orange specifically for us in our area. And that's the same with herbs all over. Growing conditions matter. So if you're trying to grow OSHA, which is a very powerful respiratory medicine, which is also being overharvested, down south, the soil makeup is going to be completely different. It's going to be hard to grow, but it's also going to have totally different medicinal quantities than if you grow it in the mountains where it's home, where you need that respiratory medicine because of the elevation. Looking at your backyard plants is super important. Here in Florida, we have hibiscus, we have aloe, we have saw palmetto, we have several things that are unique to our medica, our area, that need to be used first before we go to other areas of the world and try to take somebody else's medicine as our own.
Oh. I have all three of those in my backyard, that I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to grow all these herbs. And I have, and they're very nice. And I have no earthly idea how to use them. So they just look pretty.
Yep. And it starts with research. Chances are, if you have a plant in your backyard, it is medicinal in some way. There are definite plants that need to be learned as well because they are toxic and not suitable for consumption. But if you try to stay ignorant, then that's probably the worst thing you could do with herbal remedies. But instead, just Google it. Google hibiscus medicinal, and you'll read all about the cardiovascular toning that the flowers have. You'll learn all about the skin soothing properties that the leaves have. All of these wonderful things that are really accessible to us, but all you need to do is just start researching, just start looking for the answers and getting to know the plants in your backyard. A lot of herbalists will say, if you want to study plants, you have to start looking at them as people, getting to know them, forming a relationship with them, understanding who they are and what they do, what they're good at, what they're bad at. That way you can use them intelligently, you can grow them, you can cultivate them, and you can get back to the earth as your primary source of medicine.
Right across from you, Sam, is our tower garden.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got it last year, I just put random stuff in there. I really had no idea what I was doing. I still have no idea what I'm doing. But I planted it, and some things were great, and a lot of things just did not thrive. Like the tomatoes and anything that is more acidic, it did not thrive in that environment because I wanted to keep the pH up where the Roma does all this. Wanted to keep the pH up to where the lettuce grew. Now what I have in there, I researched all of them, and everything in there that is not lettuce is it does not promote those aphids, the little bugs, because we had a really, really hard time with that. And ironically, a lot of the the ones that produce the really pretty flowers, the marigolds and some of the edible flowers are over there that I don't want to say repel, but they don't promote the growth of the aphids. So and so that was like my single note that I looked for was, how do I keep the aphids away from my tower garden?
Oh man, there's so many. We are all over. There's a giant bush of basil on there. I ended up stealing it. Well, not stealing it. I took it. It was gifted to me to make pesto with, but that was the first thing I had to try to solve, was getting them all off of it. It worked. Pesto is delicious.
Basil, yeah, but it was very hard to get rid of that. And I'm really happy that I was able to say, okay, the internet can help me say, oh, find this. So what would you tell someone, or where would you recommend someone goes if they want to start with basic herbs?
So if you want to start with basic herbs, a great book is going to be Rosemary Gladstar's book on basic herbalism. That's going to be, she's an excellent teacher. I was taught in her lineage by Renee and Bob down here in St. Pete. And her book is just so simple, so easy, so colorful. It's available at bookstores everywhere. Rosemary Gladstar is an excellent resource. If you're interested in medicine making and you want to get into more of the hands-on approach with herbalism, there's a wonderful book, and the author's names escape me, but it's called The Herbalist's Way. And it's a little bit of a bigger book, and still easy to find, but an excellent way to just be like, the first couple chapters is, hey, you probably have dandelion growing as a weed in your yard. Did you know that that's medicine? Let me show you how to literally dig it up and make it into something beneficial. And it does that with so many core plants that are really important to understand. And it makes medicine making from the things in your backyard really accessible.
I love that about Bob Lindy and everyone down at Acupuncture and Herbal Therapies. It's that he does these herbal walks, that he just picks stuff off the trees and off of the plants, and he tells you how that you can use them in everyday life.
I feel like, Sam, you've probably seen this lady on TikTok, but she goes around and does something kind of similar, and she's like, we're going to make this really good tea out of all this stuff I found in the backyard. Like, look at all these acorns I got. We're going to make a smoothie. And I'm like, what? Okay, let's do it. Yeah,
I follow. So her name's Alexis, and she's the Black Forager, and she is absolutely one of my favorites. And her tag that she uses at the end of all of her videos is, she's like, have fun, don't die. And A lot of the videos that she started with are plant identification videos because she's like, hey, this has a toxic lookalike. By the way, you need to know this. And, it's really fun when you have all of these wonderful medicinal plants in your backyard. And she's up north. So a lot of the plants that she uses, we don't have down here. And that's also really frustrating when you get into herbalism and all of these herbs or all of these books are written by people up north. And we're down here in the south. Like, where's our herbalism book? Because we don't have all of these plants. That can be really frustrating. But following different people, especially people in your area, finding herbal schools who do the herb walks, who can introduce you to your local plants that you've passed 1,000 times and you're like, I didn't know that was medicine. Like for us, we have a lot of oak, which is really astringent, great for gums and teeth and washes to prevent infection. Super helpful for the skin as a toner, all the things that we need in order to keep our skin really, really healthy from the sun. So like aloe is great for once you've got the burn, but oak is great for preventative maintenance. And we have tons of that for skin health. But they don't necessarily need that up where it's colder and they're not exposed to the hot sun and hot and humid temperatures like we are down here.
This has been so interesting. I thank you so much Sam for coming to talk with us. And hope to talk to you soon. I know that you and I are both going to the Reflexology conference in Baltimore in October. I'm so excited. This will be my first.
Baltimore's so cool. I'm so jealous.
I don't know if I'm going to have time to go actually do anything in Baltimore, but I am excited.
The only time I've gone to Baltimore, I was stuck in traffic for 5 hours, so I understand, but it was still pretty.
Same. I've been to Baltimore like 3 or 4 times, and every time it's been traffic.
Oh, alrighty. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Sam, for joining us today. And if you guys have any questions, listeners, feel free to email us at, let's send it to me. Send it to Roma at peacefulwarriorswellness.com and I will get you your answers. Or if you just want to call us, 727-822-8866. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Peaceful Warriors Wellness. Feel better, move better, be better. When you feel better, you feel more like you. And when you move better, there's so much you can